Well, good morning and welcome to Elevenses. I'm Kevin Williams of Survival Skills Rider Training, and it's 14th of March, isn't it? It's Sunday. It's a reasonably bright morning here. Tony's already looked in and said good morning. Hi there, Tony. What have we got for you today? Well, Murray Walker has sadly died, aged 97. The DVSA have apparently, workers have voted for industrial action on COVID issues. The Isle of Man Classic TT and Manx GP have both gone away of the TT itself. Mag's Cathy Philpotts has been putting the case against the bike charges that Camden Council have come up with. Honda has suffered their worst sales for 50 years. We'll have a quick look at a Grom Cafe Racer and an Oxford Belt Connect, which is I think a cracky idea, and whether or not adventure bikes are actually sports bikes in new clothing. Right, so that's all in the next 25 minutes or so. Tony is asking if I'm feeling better. Well, I am after a fashion, Tony. Thank you very much. Just for those who don't know, I had my first anti-COVID jab on a Thursday evening. And by Friday evening, I was feeling pretty grim, I have to say. So I took to my bed all of most of Friday and yesterday morning, but I seem to have effected a cure with some vodka and tonic last night. That seems to have done the trick. I just have a bit of a hangover this morning instead, but I suppose of all the ills, it's a hangover is probably the least important at the moment. So hi to Sue and Clive, who've also looked in. Right, so yes, the webinar which I was intending to run on Friday will be tomorrow at 7:30. Right, on with what's on in the news. Murray Walker, probably best known as the iconic voice of Formula One coverage in the UK. He did that role for something like 25 years for the BBC, has died. He was 97. What's rather less well known is that motorcycling and motorcycle racing was actually his first love, and it remained his first love as well. Murray was actually a war veteran, and he was a former motorcycle racer and a trials champion. And his broadcasting career began just after the war, 1948, at the Shelsley Walsh Hill Climb. That's somewhere I keep meaning to go and haven't got to yet. His first auto racing broadcast came with the BBC when he was a corner commentator for the radio at the 1949 British Grand Prix. So he dedicated most of his early career to motorcycles, first working alongside his father and then becoming the BBC's lead motorcycle racing commentator in 1962. I still remember him commentating on the British Motorcycle Grand Prix from Silverstone one year. It was the time when the BBC had strict schedules, and those strict schedules were all based around horse racing. And so if anything disrupted the schedule, it was over to the horse racing. I can remember him saying, "And now, as the British 500cc Motorcycle Grand Prix gets underway, it's over to Cheltenham or somewhere for a motorcycle racing, for the horse racing." And he sounded really, really disappointed. His father was apparently a dispatch rider and a works motorcyclist for Rudge, Sunbeam and Norton. Murray Walker was in the tank regiment, and he said to The Guardian in an interview in 2007, "When he came out, I had delusions of grandeur that I'd be able to show my father how a motorcycle really should be raced." He said, "I was all right, but I wasn't good enough to satisfy myself because I'd started in business and I was doing fairly well. And I obviously wasn't committed because the business won the day and the hobby didn't, because I think I knew in my heart of hearts I wouldn't be the top man." Well, he certainly was the top man in the commentary box, and we will miss him. Okay, on to the rest of the news. Workers at the DVLA offices in Swansea have voted for industrial action over COVID health and safety concerns. As I reported at the end of last year, the DVLA's 16-storey HQ has seen more than 500 COVID cases since September in what the union described as the worst COVID workbreak outplace in the UK. And in fact, an outbreak was actually formally declared at the centre it's in Swansea in December, when there were 352 cases in the space of just 4 months. The DVLA spokespeople have said that they followed Welsh Government guidance at every single point throughout the pandemic, but there are more than 6,000 people working at the site, and the unions say that more than 2,000 have been going in on a daily basis, even through the worst of the outbreak. And the members of the Public and Commercial Services Union, PCS, they brought it back to strike action by 71.6% on a turnout of 50%. Boris Johnson said in January that government officials have been working flat out to introduce a range of safety measures, and that it would allow them to deliver essential services in a COVID secure way. But the Shadow Transport Secretary, Jim McMahon, said it was shameful that workers were having to strike because they felt unsafe. He said this resulted in a damning indictment on DVLA management in an abject failure to keep staff safe. Oh, sorry, that was Mark Vodka, who's the PCS General Secretary. So the union will now meet with management, and they will try to work out what will be done. The PCS union says it wants to see numbers on site reduced to the hundreds rather than thousands, and to allow vulnerable people to be sent home either to work from home or to have paid leave. The DVSA themselves say that now cases are so low, claim to be just 5 at the moment, then they say that industrial action is wrong and will have a detrimental effect on motorists. Okay, over to the Isle of Man from Swansea, and the Isle of Man Classic TT has been cancelled. This was due to take place between Sunday the 22nd and Monday the 30th of August, and the event joins the main TT event, which was due in June, of course, in being cancelled 2 years running. Basically what's the problem is the organisers have said that the issue is the ongoing uncertainty regarding the availability of marshals, medics, race officials and vital volunteers during the pandemic. And Paul Phillips, who's the TT Business Development Manager, commented, obviously this is yet another disappointing announcement to us to make, but as with the cancellation of the 2021 TT races, it was important that an early decision was made to give clarity and certainty to the thousands of visitors and individuals that come together for the classic TT. The subsequent Manx Grand Prix, which is kind of seen as an amateur's gateway to the TT itself, has also been called off. Lawrence Skelly, who's the island's Minister for Department for Enterprise, said we also have to prioritise the health and well-being of the island's residents and the sustainability of our own health service through managing our island's border protocols, allowing medical professionals both on the island and those that come over to support the event to instead be able to concentrate on the ongoing medical challenges presented by the global pandemic. And of course, disappointing as this is to competitors and to fans alike, it's also a major blow to the island's economy, specifically the small businesses that do very well on the back of the TT and the Manx Grand Prix and the classic racing. So hopefully, as they say, focus and resources will be switched to a return in 2022. So I do hope that goes ahead. I have to say it's always one of my highlights on the television or on the occasions I've been over to the TT. Here in London, what's been going on? Well, I reported some months ago that under council proposes in Camden, motorcyclists would face very steep rises in the cost of parking. At the moment, riders can park for free in dedicated motorcycle bays, and residents can park in residence bays for an annual permit of £65. But Camden wants to do away with the free bays completely to increase residence charges to £140 a year, which is more than double, and to charge a whopping £359.15 for a business parking permit. Meanwhile, visitor charges for casual parking would rise to no less than £6 a day. Now, for someone who commutes into work and relies on free parking to park near their place of work, say you park 5 days a week, 45 days a year, which isn't unreasonable, that would work out to be a truly unbelievable £1,350 for annual parking. So, not too surprisingly, Motorcycle Action Group have been on the case, and their Cathy Philpotts was able to speak to a full council meeting earlier this month. And she said that the petition against the price changes, and supported by the GMB union, had reached nearly 1,500 signatories, and that the signatures represented a full cross-section of the borough's workers, from doctors and nurses to actors and handymen. And she said in her statement, people often using motorcycles when public transport isn't there. This will stop key workers such as nurses and doctors from working in Camden, and they're the heroes of this pandemic. She also warned that low-paid workers would be disproportionately hard hit. And one signatory, Roseanne Luther, who's a staff nurse at University College Hospital, which is in the Euston Road, she said, not being able to use my motorbike will affect my shift work, especially due to reduced services on weekends. During the pandemic, using a motorcycle has allowed me to avoid unnecessary contact with members of the public, as I'm at high risk of being a carrier and spreading the virus unknowingly. So what was Camden's response? Well, their environmental chief, Labour councillor Adam Harrison, said no decision has yet been made on the changes, and a final proposal would come back to the council's cabinet in July. These proposals were still being looked at and worked at, and considering what mitigations there might be going forward. He said, we were looking at the daily permit of £6. The equivalent permit for a car would be £36. So one of the arguments that was put forward would be a shift to cars instead of using bikes, and he sort of said basically that wouldn't happen because of the car charges. So yes, all right, well, there's justification for you for whacking those bike parking charges up. And just in case you're thinking, well, that's London, doesn't affect me, it's always worth remembering that what starts in London almost always moves out to the provinces sooner or later. Okay. As I've reported, 2020 has been a bad year for motorcycle manufacturers across the board because of the COVID-19 pandemic, and even the sort of top manufacturers have been hit hard. Honda saw their sharpest ever decline in sales last year, the worst in half a century, and ending 2020, they had made just 13.5 million powered two-wheeler sales. Now, that sounds like a pretty enormous figure, but not when you put it in context with the 2019 figures. They were down 24.4%, or down a total of 5 million vehicles. So the pandemic really has hit Honda surprisingly hard. Right, okay, so just a reminder, you are tuned to Elevenses with Kevin Williams of Survival Skills Rider Training. Don't forget, you can catch up with this show on Wednesdays and Sundays at 11, and you can get hold of the show after the event as well on Facebook here, or you can go over to my YouTube channel, Survival Skills UK, where you can also find other interesting videos, and you can also find it on Coffee if you want to, and I'll give you the link to that towards the end of the show. Right, okay, so what else? Well, a Sakuma drop is apparently a kind of hard sweet made in Japan. Now, whether there's a connection with this machine, it's the winner of the Honda Motorbike Idea Challenge for 2020. I don't know. It's a Honda Grom under the clothing there, and the racer there, the Cafe Racer, is called Sakuma. The MXS 125 has proven a pretty popular seller, actually. You see a surprising number of little things around on the roads, but it's also been a foundation for custom bike builders, as Honda pretty much intended, because it comes with easily removable parts that can be upgraded easily enough. This particular creation was put together by the Furi shop from Thailand, and as well as the sort of fairly obvious Ducati SS lookalike bolt-on fairing, there are other bolt-on bits, wavy discs and nitron shock, but unlike a lot of these kind of styling exercises, there seems to be a fair amount of actual real engineering put into the bike. I've got a video link for you to have a look at it, so you can see some of the work that went on into it. And bright orange coated frame, that reshaped fuel tank, and a suede seat finishes the whole thing off. And as I say, I'll give you the YouTube link in a minute. And I have to say, I actually quite like the look of it. Now, to my price sensitive eye, Oxford products often seem to come up with overpriced and often fairly non-useful pieces of motorcycle equipment. But here's something that caught my eye as actually something that could be genuinely useful to some riders. It's very straightforward. It's a belt connector. The idea is basically that what you do is you slip this sleeve around your belt. You tuck your belt in the usual belt loops around your trousers, and then you have something that you can connect to your jacket, your Oxford jacket. Now, years ago when I was a courier, I discovered that one of the quickest ways to get cold on a bike was actually to wear a separate jacket and trousers, because however tight you sort of make the jacket, and there's always a gap, and cold air got in, and there's always a sort of a particular gap at the back, because most bike jackets are actually cut square so that they sit sort of symmetrically when you're standing up. And of course, as soon as you sit down on a bike, particularly if you've got a bike with a forward lean, the jacket rides up at the back. So you can even end up with a gap at the back. So if you've got a bomber jacket style, then there's actually exposed shirt, and that was a real problem. So one-piece riding kit's obviously one solution, but if you've ever struggled in and out of sweaty one-piece leathers on a hot day, you'll know there are drawbacks. Generally, it can be a two-person job after sort of a hot track session, I know from personal experience. So that's why a lot of riders, of course, go for a full-length zip between matching jacket and trousers, which is all right if they come from the same manufacturer, but you may want to look for different manufacturers for jackets and trousers. Not everybody is the standard shape that manufacturers come up with, so that's particularly, I think, relevant with abrasion resistant jeans these days. So basically, this is a long-winded way of saying that the Oxford belt connector can allow you to connect somebody else's jeans with any Oxford motorcycle jacket, which has the short zip at the back. And of course, you can always use a connector to connect your Oxford jacket to Oxford's own trousers if they don't actually come with a zip attachment. And many of the casual Levi styled abrasion resistant trousers don't actually have any kind of zip together. And of course, as there's some standardization in zip sizes, you may find that you can attach other clothing, but don't take that as gospel that your own jacket will zip. Try before you buy. So to basically, that's all it is, but it's a really bargainous £16.99, which I think is actually a good price for that piece of kit. Okay, so who else we got come in? Sue said hello, Clive said hello, Nigel said hello, Cheryl has said hello too, and Tony says to sell bikes you have to have products that people want to buy. Yes, that's absolutely true, but I do think that the problem at the moment is fairly clear. It is the problems with COVID. Right, okay, so what else? Well, I was listening to a debate on the Road Safety GB powered two-wheeler webinar that's going on at the moment, and you can find the link to the events here. I did mean to put this up actually last week and forgot. I've got my own Science of Being Seen presentation going to be shown on Friday the 19th, incidentally. So if you want to see that, you can tune in and watch it over there. I'm not quite sure what time it is. But the event on Thursday was a question and answer session with basically a panel of people from the motorcycle industry fielding questions from the public. And the first question was actually fired at them was, it's clear that motorcycles are principally marketed on their capacity for speed and performance. Well, that's less of a question than a statement. So the question was actually, should manufacturers be doing more to keep their customer base alive? And I suspect there was a deliberate double entendre there when the statement was alive. Now, my mind immediately leaped back to one of the recurring themes in motorcycle research, something that's basically, there have been papers published on this for 20 years or more. basically numerous research studies and less formal articles, in the road safety press, have sought to show that the bike crash problem, if I can kind of do the inverted comma thing there, has been all about sensation-seeking riders and aggressive personality types. And what they seek to show with these studies very often is that they can link those personality types with a kind of motorcycle. And what they found, if you do a Google, you'll find quite regularly that what they did was they pointed the finger at men, and men owning sports bikes and men speeding and crashing as being overrepresented in accident stats. So basically, there has been a movement within the motorcycle industry to distance themselves from the sports bike end of the market and to promote other styles of motorcycle. And you may say it's been very successful, because if you look at the model ranges, you'll find there are very few sports bikes left. The 600 Super Sport class, for example, is almost completely dead. I think the only one left is the Kawasaki. The 750 sports bike class, well, that's gone by the board. And even the 1000cc, the sales of those bikes are very, very tiny compared with what they were 20 years ago, even 10 years ago. And you'll probably also notice, if you look at the sales stats, that the biggest seller virtually month on month are the BMW 1200, 1250 GS series of bikes, and it has been the top seller for some considerable time. So with all that in my mind, I sat back to listen to Karen Cole of the MCIA, the Motorcycle Industry Association, field the question. And her response was, to quote, "Different types of motorcycle are marketed in different ways specific to their own purpose and performance is relative to the type of use and not necessarily down to speed." So she basically, what she was trying to say there was that you can define performance in different ways. So, for example, a bike that can handle a dirt road might have very good performance in terms of suspension and wheel size and tires. So basically, there are different measures in the way that you can define performance, which I thought was a bit disingenuous. She then went on to argue that sports motorcycles have a valid place because they are only something that compares with sports cars and sports boats, and she said that as they make up now less than 8% of the sales, and that the marketing for this kind of machine had in consequence dropped right off. She said that when she took the job on 20 years ago, the bikes took up 40 to 50% of the market, and now they don't. And she used that to argue that speed, or at least the advertisement of speed as an agreeable benefit of owning a sports bike, was no longer an issue. Well, okay. So what can we say about that? Well, if you're a regular visitor here, and I notice obviously most of the people looking in probably are, you'll know that whilst the popular style of bike might have shifted, we no longer see the roads filled with GSXR thousands and the like. The bikes ridden has changed. What hasn't changed is just the kind of crashes we have. We still have exactly the same kind of crashes we've always done. And they happen at junctions, in corners, and when overtaking in much the same proportions that they ever happened. So all that argues that the type of motorcycle we purchase is irrelevant, or at least very much irrelevant. And I mentioned the BMW 12 series, the GS style. It's been a huge hit, of course. So what happened? As soon as it started selling big numbers, all the other manufacturers have jumped on to grab a slice of that adventure bike pie. So, just a very quick sort of glance at a list of style of bike. You can buy the KTM 1290, the Triumph Tiger, the Aprilia Capo Nord, the Ducati Multistrada, there's the Yamaha Super Tenere, off Africa's the Africa Twin from Honda. And think about what those bikes actually bring to the rider. Now, The bikes that actually defined the adventure bike class, which were machines like the original Africa Twin and the original Super Tenere, they punted out around 60 odd horsepower. I remember riding an Africa Twin, thoroughly enjoying it, and remarking on the fact that it had a fairly reasonable top speed of between 110 and 115. Don't ask me where I found that out, officer. But now the Capo Nord puts out 130 horsepower. The Tiger is claimed to produce 140. The Multistrada and the KTM 1290 are reputed to churn out 160 horsepower. One reviewer of the KTM said that might sound absurd for an adventure bike. Well, let's get it straight. It is absurd. It's not too many years ago that 160 horsepower in a sports bike chassis would have put you on the World Superbike grid and probably given you a pretty good chance of winning if you are a half-decent rider. So yes, 160 horsepower in an adventure bike is absurd. Let's not beat about the bush. Let's not try to rewrite what we're seeing here. These are not low-risk adventure bikes that were defined as the safer machines that we should be encouraging riders to aspire to, as the industry claimed some 10, 12, 15 years ago. As Karen Cole actually continued, the manufacturers are adding new technology, she said, to make the bikes safer to ride. Safer to ride or practical to ride? When that KTM first appeared, the reviewer noted that it actually needed was the word he said, a number of electronic features to make it manageable. And he listed electronic suspension, power output modes, traction control, ABS, and even a hill hold, which I suspect is probably not actually necessary to ride it unless you are completely ham-fisted. But you know, let's be honest about this. Adventure bikes are the new sports bikes. They're just in new clothes. So next time somebody tells you that they're safer to ride, ask yourself which is the real solution to improving motorcycle crash stats. Is it the hardware in control of the rider, or is it the wetware on the seat in control of the bike? Right, okay, that's my little rant over. So, all right. I still left all that picture up, didn't I? Never mind. So what are we doing now as we round off the show for today? Well, I am now taking bookings. I am back out on the road on the 29th of March, which is the first allowable day. Don't forget, you can still get my Back to Biking webinars. It would normally be on Friday, but we'll do one on Monday to catch up. And then the next one will be Friday this week. And we'll be looking at brakes and wrist fitness as well. Don't giggle in the back row. This would also be a great time for you to head over to check out my 60-second safety videos, which are over on YouTube. I'm up to number 26 over there, I think. Also, the Skills on Saturday, Tips on Tuesday series are still going out on Facebook, and they're also going up on my coffee page as well. So do look in over there and if you want something to read. And finally, of course, you can support me for £3 and you can open up the archive over there, which is over 350 articles at the moment. Last but not least, there is the newsletter as well to sign up to if you want to. All right, that's it for another show, almost bang on the 30 minutes today. So thank you all for looking in this morning. Stay safe out there, and we'll see you again on Wednesday. So from Kevin Williams and Survival Skills, thank you for watching Elevenses this morning. Bye for now.